Good afternoon, investors and speculators. There comes an interesting moment, a moment in which every investor is in a phase of a certain cycle. Is it worth fixing something, or will the growth continue? Today I will answer the most difficult questions. How far will the SPY go? What awaits us with the next rate cut? And let's look at the wide market of small companies. And of course, China. China, from our last review, Fundamental with Nick, where we bought securities, almost gives 100% of our securities. Will I fix it today? I will answer this question, since there is about 50% left before fixing, and the paper will make the first paper profit of 100%. Let's start with the SPY, and here we see the same trend. This trend has been moving for a very long time. Let's increase the time frame to 15 years. Look a little more broadly. Despite all the crises, we are now with you before the election race. And when elections begin, the market always pumps up, shows its muscles, and continues its growth without volumes. Here we will have both a good upward movement and a strong downward movement. We have actually reached the upper limit, and let's see, we have 6,156 points on the upper limit. Yes, it's not bad. It's a pretty strong growth. On the other hand, in addition to the upper limit here, we have already rewritten all-time high 5,830 points locally, and we have 200 to 300 points left to the upper values. 6,000 points will be a strong value, and we can already see a downward hike from the round value, and most players will actively start with SPY starting from 6,000 points. Everything will depend on the strength of the retail investor's open interest, and if the retail investor prevails and wants to start the market can reach 6,156 points and shake its nerves by drawing a double top at the top here. While we don't see this locally, we need to see what we will have based on the election race. From the last video, you and I foresaw what would happen if Trump won, and what would happen if Kamala Harris won. Be sure to watch this video. And with Kamala Harris's latest statement that she is also interested in blockchain and cryptocurrency, we understand that America has no choice but to pump up cryptocurrency, earn big money here with its corporate sector, and it remains to understand where and to what values. On the one hand, you and I have a long trend that goes on with the change of president. If you and I change the party, we will see a strong downward movement with you. We may even see a breakdown. If we see a similar tail behind the trend line, there will be the most interesting opportunities here. Therefore, we will start now with you mainly from China and look at the Hang Seng Index. The Hang Seng Index is growing very strongly with you on the one hand. On the other hand, we have a small upper limit here, which we are trying to overcome. Despite the fact that we have almost overcome it, we have reached a strong resistance level locally and are ready for a pullback. Here we have a correction just around the corner, and I will answer the question of what I will do with my Chinese securities. The Chinese papers I'm looking at will mostly go over the most important ones, and this is, of course, Alibaba. Alibaba is also approaching the upper limit. Despite the index, we can still grow to $107 to $108 here with you. To overcome this upper limit, we have a small local level of $110 here. If we overcome it, jump out and break through $118, then we will already go to the upper zone of horizontal volumes in the area of $176. Now is the time when we had an accumulation zone in the region of $84. We went to the historical bottom, touched it, and did not actually touch it anymore. Large volumes have accumulated here, and we are approaching a strong resistance zone, after which a correction may overtake us. I bought JD, analyzed this paper fundamentally, why I like it, and from the paid group of our closed club, we finally saw this continuous growth. The news was positive, and we had two crazy gaps here, which lead me to the next resistance zone of 3,967, and I have a limit order here. The paper will make exactly 100%, well, almost 100%. I will not embellish. Here my average was around $23, respectively. $44 is needed and a little higher. But here I already have a limit order. I really want to take my hard-earned money that I invested in this asset, and I will leave the virtual money that has increased in this asset with a much higher goal and more likely even with a move. Despite this, we are approaching the resistance zone. I have determined this price for myself, $39.67, then $44.13. There will be more local resistance, and we will see with you how the asset will finally turn around. What is going on with whether the car we have is in the sidewall all this time and came to the middle of the channel zone? Here we can see with you how many touches there were. When we were in the accumulation zone, we could not break through this level. Then, as soon as we broke through, parabolic growth began, which tells us that it is still too early to talk about China, that finally the same bullish growth has begun. Here, as with Alibaba, JD, and many other Chinese securities, we just returned to the middle of the channel and really made a good profit, and maybe we will give a good pullback. For Li Auto, there are large horizontal volumes in the area of $30.84, and now it is very important to break through 26.51, gain a foothold, jump to 27.66 and draw fractals, roll back, show volumes, show the buyer and hold this level, and then we will continue to grow according to the trend. The power reserve is still small, of course, there is up to $30. Next, it will be interesting to observe. The strongest Chinese paper related to computer technology and games is following the trend here. It also began to grow, jumped out into the middle of the channel. This channel is also very clearly visible, so we can still reach $97 here, and we also have a small power reserve here. But we have not yet followed this paper to the trend line, and I have a bell marked at $72.44. In case of this level, of course, I will be happy to buy such a trend paper. You must have it in your portfolio. Our TL jumped to $10. We broke through the downward trend, and here we jumped to $12 in huge volumes, and the TL is ready to return to this trend and break through $14. But until we have broken through $14, we are not ready to close the gap at 18.50. I have about 2,000 securities here, which already give more than 700% of the profit, but these papers are blocked and I will never be able to sell them in the near future. Let's see, one of my securities, ADMA, now gives 1,500% profit. I can't sell them either, they are blocked. But according to ADMA, the targets were initially much lower, and if I reached plus 400% there, I would have sold a long time ago. And here we will see how long-term investment and possible unblocking will affect specific goals, and for most interesting junk papers, I am in the situation of Buffett. I will watch from the sidelines. I cannot sell them, but maybe this will bring me the biggest profit. We will see. Also, since I mentioned the ADMA paper, I'll just show you what happened here. I bought it. My average is around $1.30 on this paper. Here the large horizontal volumes shifted around $2, but when they were at the level of $1.30, I bought it, and actively I told you about it. Globally, you and I haven't even started to grow much yet. There's nothing to draw here. I don't really observe anymore. I only see blocked papers, but to see plus 1,500%, there's a pretty pleasant story there, and apparently the ADMA is growing much stronger than the market. The market hasn't really started to lower rates yet. The paper was it has been unprofitable for a long time. We see it from negative reports, and this is the very example when the paper began to show profit. I expect growth of 1.5 to 2,000% for many of my interesting papers in 2025 to 2026. The calculation will be solely on the fact that These papers will begin to make a profit, and in the future video we will look into this with you, so I suggest moving to the second list that I have prepared. There are a large number of securities that have not grown very much yet, but have huge potential, since they are still unprofitable but promise to finally make a profit in 2025 to 2026. We will start with Zoom. Despite the fact that this paper is actually very profitable, here the approach of top management proves that they generally do not care. They have already earned a lot of money and are not particularly invested in the business. Despite this, I do not see anything shameful, but I see a huge consolidation zone, and we are ready to fly much higher. Locally, we need to break through $77.86 in order to start closing the gap in the area of $96. It is not shameful to take 100% in such an asset. Renaissance Technologists has an average much higher than $150. Their average here is around $180, and Nanita and Katie would have an average around $240 here. Accordingly, the targets are much higher, and the paper has actually not even started to grow yet. Despite this, the horizontal volumes are now a resistance line, and we did not try to jump out here and make a small pullback into this zone. In fact, in order to break through, we need to see in October there will be a good report here. I keep a small purchase here, and my average is around $77. I have a small drawdown here now. Next up is Zillow, a real estate company. Here, too, the very exit from the paper is already taking place. We have been accumulating for a long time, and here we have formed an interesting trend within which we have actually flown up and are ready for a bull market. Unlike most securities, we are ready to overcome $66 and be in the void. This is how the accumulation zone is located. We have consolidated for a long time and are ready to close the gap and go for $84. Everyone had the opportunity to go in for $35. There were large-scale volumes here. No one would have bought at the historical bottom, but since 2020 the paper has adjusted by $26, and in fact here we were at this historical day. Globally, there is a more distinct level here. No one ever buys on these fractals, but there were a lot of touches here, and most likely most investors had a lot of opportunities to enter. Here we have a very beautiful picture for the breakdown and up. Western Digital, there is no special point in collecting this paper. Here we have a crazy sidewall. I just need to wind it like this, and you and I see this as a cardiogram of a patient who is trying to live. His business makes money, but it is unclear how he can grow up and rewrite historical ADH. This is a good business which, like McDonald's, does not rewrite only historical trends due to inflation. This has a very good effect only on the consumer sector. Here we actually have just a horizontal volume, and at 38, bought at the bottom, sold at the top, and there is probably no point in sorting here. This asset is a profitable company, does not belong to our assets. I don't know how I got it here, but you and I also hooked it and disassembled it. And now my little garbage companies where I have very large drawdowns. And here is this consolidation zone which was in the VMEO. Look at these volumes at the drop. Despite this, I am currently at zero in this asset. When the paper was around $3, my drawdown reached almost 50% there. Now we have seen the largest horizontal volumes here in the region of $3.70, and as I remember here, we had ADH in the region of $58 and the IPO price in the region of $29 to $28. It is in this zone that I have the main target prices for this paper. The main task is to make the right decision despite the fact that we have always had losses here. Crazy volumes have passed here. We see great consolidation and local goals with you. For local purposes, I would probably define for myself $13 here where I could take my own more than 100% at least my real invested money in this asset if there is a more interesting idea where I can transfer. Here, you and I have a paper that is actually at a low start waiting for another rate cut. Let me remind you that this is a paper that wants to become a competitor to YouTube and replace it. So far, he is not succeeding, but the profit is coming, I think. YouTube has already finished everyone a long time ago, and in general, the paper can grow much more than $58, and at the current capitalization, it is very cheap. There is no point in disassembling Uber here, but Unity should definitely be looked at. Here we are going strictly according to the forecast, despite the fact that we have fallen a little lower since the last forecast. I failed to find the bottom, but here are $15.20, and here, of course, I bought this paper for both cheeks, and around $29 it will be the first 100% on Unity. The main goal and target for this paper is in the region of $108 to $175 locally, but globally, the programmers and I communicate with in Europe, the guys buy this paper and are going to wait for it much higher than $200. Their main target is just in the year 25. Unity promises to be profitable. We have seen a large number of very bad reports here, but despite this, I see these volumes and in fact, I don't care what kind of reports are here. I looked at the reviews of Wall Street analysts. The first profit is expected in the year 25, and I hope to be on this train. The train will be of unprecedented generosity because my programmers are waiting for this paper in the region of $500. More likely, we just have a left shoulder formed here. There is an accumulation period. I would set targets for myself. Well, if you just look at it somehow, more or less adequately, well, you can aim around $400. This is a pretty crazy figure. But this is the American market. It makes it possible with the right accumulation of good securities to earn a lot of money. And here, about $15,000 have been invested, which in theory should turn into, okay, let's not make a guess. Let's not count the virtual profit. The most basic thing I need is to answer the question of whether it is worth selling it for $29 if you have 100% if you bought with me. No, definitely not. If you really want to and really, then $42.64. Is a local price list, and even from the current values the paper will make almost 100%, so in the area of $42. I will look at the general agenda time intervals, where the S&P 500 is located, who became president, what rate, and whether inflation is accelerating. Therefore, watch all the videos carefully, and it's time to buy Unity anyway. We have not broken through this trend yet. The paper is very weak due to its reports, and we are testing what was support has now become resistance. Next, we have Twilio paper. Unfortunately, we have not had a current decline here while the paper is very weak in the current market. Everyone is waiting for the report in October. Despite the $2 billion buyback and the fact that we are now showing crazy profits from negative reports, I have studied this company and we have a separate video on YouTube dedicated to the foundation of this company. Be sure to watch it. During all this time, nothing has changed. The main targets and goals were in this zone. They will be here. The main local target for this paper is $131. And it is very important to look at this report and again, all those events that will be in the near future. My dream is for Twilio to go to the historical bottom and buy a good one here. Well, if they give me the opportunity, I'm out of position here and I'm watching very closely. While this story is in the resistance zone of $64.23, we cannot overcome it. A small farm company. It went up to $1.50 here, and I bought this paper the same way as ADMA paper. Unfortunately, my average is in the horizontal volume zone of $3.70, and the paper is in a small plus, which is Very sad despite the big negative. Reports, we made a profit, but there was no growth here. My main goal is $8.38 to touch this zone and here. Again, take my 100% blood money and leave it here at an average of $3.72 with the main target of $17.24. The company is very interesting, funds are invested here. It is already making a profit and everything is great in general. Everything has been justified. But on the one hand, my deepest disappointment and my greatest interest is the body. I invested the most money there, it is in a crazy accumulation zone. We went to a super historical bottom. And no one really cares about health insurance under Biden. They are not interested in crazy. Negative reports say that the business has problems. But when I study the reports, nothing really bothers me. The customer base is growing, revenue is not stagnating, but these huge negative reports indicate that. At the moment we are having problems locally and in general America is not up to medicine. There are a lot of people and migrants, it is not necessary to treat them. New ones will arrive. Let's see what will happen under the new president. What will happen with the rate, but we are now in a crazy zone of horizontal volumes. I do not average this paper, I do not get it. My average is around $20 and the drawdown is more than 60%. The main targets that I had, of course, are as local, it's just here in this zone to close. This gap, take your 100% and leave this asset for a long time. Most of the eminent foundations say that this will be in Amazon in the field of medicine, but so far I have seen a small number of tricks locally. The first catch is that Katie Wood closes this paper at a loss, which gave a big decrease. For me, this is mainly the positive side of the fact that large investors come out and redistribute this paper at current prices. If someone closes a paper at a big loss, and let me remind you, Katie Wood's average in this paper is around $150 to $200 respectively, she closes it at a loss of 95% and she can pay for good growth on this paper. But she is rebalancing the paper. She invested $4 billion in this paper, as I recall, with an average of $150, and these $4 billion have now turned into a couple hundred million. Closing with the current loss, in fact, it closes a small part and continues to rebalance the portfolio. Nothing supernatural. If you want an overview of Katie Wood's portfolio, write comments. I doubt that anyone else is following this whole thing, but I'm watching very closely and I understand that this asset definitely has a future. But with current reports, it is not yet farsighted. And it is very difficult for paper to grow in the conditions of the current rate. But the debt burden is not critical, the risk of bankruptcy for this issuer is minimal. At a cost of $300, the company's capitalization was in the region of $30 billion, but now the company's capitalization is in the region, in my opinion, in the region of $2 billion. And let's see, here we have $1.5 billion and $1.5 billion capitalization now with revenue. You just understand these important figures. With revenue of $550 million per quarter, the capitalization of the company is $1.5 billion. The extreme undervaluation of this asset, it is a pity that I have an average, of course, not now and there are no assets, that I am ready to rebalance and increase the share of this company, since the share is already too large and I definitely will not do this. But if you don't have this paper and you're considering telemedicine, take a closer look. Well, here, in fact, the patient's cardiogram has been in consolidation for a very long time. It is ready to go for $90, but the paper does not do this much. Snapchat never went off and did not get into my portfolio. I really wanted to buy it for $6, but this asshole needed to buy it for $8 for a year and it was safe to make 100% in it. Snapchat has a huge future, but it does not want to go to its super historical bottom in 2019, and here we actually have this price turned out to be the lowest point. Shopify has grown very much, a very cool asset. I remind you that Google invested crazy money here and It was obvious from these volumes. We made 50% in this asset, exited it, but the decline did not follow and it did not draw the second bottom and began its recovery further along the trend. This is one of the assets in which it was not possible to make 100%, but it is also a profit in Africa. We will not be upset. Is it worth paying attention to the papers that were on the SFIX in 2020? We were asked to disassemble this paper, but here we have a large consolidation zone, $2.50. Despite this, I do not see any interest for myself personally. I have not fundamentally analyzed this paper, but the consolidation zone is very large and there are crazy volumes here. The reports are terrible, they are all negative, respectively. When there is a profit, the paper can recover to a strong support zone and you and I have a target for this asset of $17.86. Judging by the fact that the large volumes that are here and they were in this unloading, the pump reached $113. The paper was very heavily unloaded and drowned, but even here the paper was profitable. Now the business is doing very badly and the debt burden has an impact on quotes, but the accumulation from this accumulation shot from $2 to $5.60 here. I would definitely take my 100% in this zone and look carefully at the report. According to Roku, we are going according to the forecast. Since the last forecast from the video, you and I have had the first impulse. We have broken through $74 and are ready to close this gap to the area of $87. Roku is well done. We have an average of $53 we gained in. This consolidation zone went a little lower. Well, of course, where without this it is impossible to pick up the movement without drawdown. We have kept its large volume and let me remind you that according to Roku, the main goal and target is around 170 families. In this paper we really want to make 100%, but for this you and I need to at least overcome this zone. The next zone is $102 and large volumes are needed here. While we are in the consolidation zone and in the accumulation zone, which tells us that, again, our reports are negative. And the paper has big problems. They are now spending a lot of logistics costs and this is very clearly visible in each report. According to Rivian, nothing actually happens here with you. The electric car is not in favor yet, although we have such a small kind of compression here. But I don't like this paper yet. On the other hand, look at these volumes. The volumes are good, the reports are negative, but all volumes have consolidated down here. Once the volumes were at the level of $54 and the paper at the start of the IPO on the hype of pickups or electric cars is very beautiful. Once I watched a couple of videos on YouTube, I really liked the car from the point of view of design aesthetics. It's a really cool car and I think in America, in any case, pickups are in demand and this business will bring some cash flow. But global electric cars are certainly not in favor now. If these pickups had a hybrid component, like Li Autos, the guys would have cost $54 a long time ago. But they go their own way, so I'm watching from the sidelines. Who likes this paper? We are now in a zone of strong consolidation of volumes on support. It is important to analyze what funds are doing and look at forecasts. If the forecasts for 2025 can somehow align, and the guys come out with serious revenue, then there will be a good opportunity. They asked to see what was happening with hydrogen. Plug power. Everything related to energy now has no subsidies at all. This is very clearly visible. We rewrite this bottom every time. But look at these crazy volumes, and it's worth taking a closer look here. Despite the fact that we have seen the cost of $75 here with negative reports, this suggests that virtually everything related to hydrogen has not yet played out in any way, and the business has not shown itself in any way. We have a huge downtrend. I don't even know how to bend it. The data that is happening between you and me is actually, it can be determined. If the business does well, then we can see a $9 departure. On the other hand, it is enough for us to make 100% in this asset, This is a hike of $5.72. And for these volumes, I would set take profit at my 100% blood in these values, and judging by the reports, nothing changes. Therefore, it is very important to keep an eye on the agenda here, whether someone else will be involved in energy. Trump has been actively pumping energy, investing a lot of subsidies in Tesla, and perhaps I would pay attention to such papers. Again, if Trump wins, and he will help the business further in the campaign to the top. The path is in a zone of strong consolidation. Everything has just changed here, the CEO, and this brought down the paper from $20 to $12 and returned to the consolidation zone. And in fact, we have the first bottom here and the second bottom here, and this is a good paper that is already profitable. I have analyzed it more than once in my videos. I would add only one thing here. I keep the paper for a small amount. I have about $5,000 invested here, but I like the paper. The paper is very good, of high quality, with very high goals. My goals are in the IPO zone. Globally, this is in the $54 zone, but locally, of course, I already did 100% here and the paper came back down. Unfortunately here, I just took my hard-earned money. The remainder doubled. All my profits are just breathing a little bit of life right now. But there is no additional liquidity to buy this paper, but the opportunity zone is very good. While I'm watching from the side, I'm holding, I'm looking, everything is fine. I like the asset, the paper is fundamentally very strong. You definitely need to look at the market. The market continues to be in the consolidation zone. The consolidation zone is $5 and the main targets are mine in the area of $11 to make 100% on this paper. As soon as the rate decreases aggressively, the paper will start to grow. Until this happens, the paper is already showing profit, so I recommend paying very close attention to this asset. IIPR has finally started to grow strongly. The dividend paper brings 10%, a huge profit. It is growing very much. Who does not want to invest directly in cannabis but lies down in a square meter in New York, which was specially built to grow cannabis on it? This is McDonald's in fact in the world of cannabis. I'm in according to my dividend strategy. I invest this paper with all the profits that I trade at any price in order to receive dividends, and I will really hope that the paper will adjust, make a good rollback to the level of $111 in order to buy more. Robinhood, for a long time we consolidated and went down to $22 here. In fact, you and I have paper ready to grow further a long time ago. These are the movements that take place in order to shake out the longists as much as possible. The most difficult thing is when you are in a position to see your asset plus 100% and then plus 20%. On the other hand, it is very important, if you are an investor with much higher targets, to observe the fundamental component. And here we see that in the accumulation zone all the reports were negative, but here is a positive report. And on this report, the paper was heavily adjusted. It doesn't matter what happens at the moment. It's important what your main goal is. And for most bull markets, when it starts, and now there is no bull market even at the moment, the stakes are still high, and you and I will have to see a large number of declines in 2025. Our main task is to keep the virtual profit and achieve the final profit that we initially put into our strategy. And I will try to help you in every possible way. Well, here, unfortunately, is one of those very papers where I closed completely plus 100%, and unfortunately, this is one of my firstly, the first videos on YouTube, my favorite office we bought with you in the consolidation zone. The American terminal always tells us where the largest volumes are and where consolidation is going on. I closed the paper at $32, taking 100% and lost a very good asset, which in any case will rewrite the historical ADH and comes off according to my targets, according to all my videos. You know that I am waiting for $140 for DKNG. Unfortunately, here I violated my strategy, took away, based on the current local agenda at that moment. The paper, unfortunately, showed crazy strength. Here we also see negative reports, and then the paper turned into profit much earlier than I planned and flew into space. This is what a crazy mistake looks like, where I can't find an entry point for a return on such investments. On the one hand, you will say, well, you sold 32, what's the problem with buying 40? And the paper even went to 29. I identified for myself, of course, the $24 zone, and here, 27.52 were the zones where I was ready to return the paper. Unfortunately, the paper has not reached this point, but we'll see. Hopefully DKNG will be able to do it. We were also asked to look at CDLX. Here we have a very ragged schedule, but we also see consolidation and a large horizontal volume in the area of 6.44. I also really want to show the goals, and in order for the bullish rally to begin in this paper, you and I need to overcome $27.89. A good opportunity. One of the members of the trading community is watching this paper carefully. There is a negative report here. I fundamentally do not know what the paper does, but apparently the volumes here are small. This is a low liquid paper. Here we have small volumes, and they immediately shot from $5 to $20. That is, the paper flies very much, and we are at a super bottom. In no case should you invest more than 1 to 2, maximum 3% in such securities if you have thoroughly understood it. In my opinion, this is a low liquid outsider paper, but at one time it cost $160, and every outsider has moments that can allow a business to change the rules. Here we can see how in April it was possible to close just the charts. You and I had a crazy amount of volume traded, after which the paper grew to $20, and the paper periodically builds up such whistles. Now the price is good, but now the market is skewing in hay, and unfortunately after the report the paper fell down a gap to a super historical bottom. You need to understand the report. And of course you need to pay attention to APPS. PPS has finally begun to consolidate. Huge volumes have passed here, and the paper has not yet begun to grow. I am waiting for my goals of $7.62. Probably here you can find a more beautiful level, and $7.32. In any case, the average is $3.46. I have another position that is in a drawdown, although it also made profits, but in no case will I close it. We did not even close this gap in the region of $5. I like APPS, and here we see a profitable company. The only profit has decreased very much, but these volumes, they occurred here at the very bottom, and I am pleased. On the previous asset we saw what happened next, and more likely in the October report we will see this asset at $7.32. The video we have with you turned out to be very long, for 40 minutes, but it's time when the rates are going down. And our task in our strategy for most securities is to start rebalancing. For some securities it is very important to apply the decision on time, and as soon as you have made a decision, to strictly follow it. In no case in this case you do not need to be exposed to FOMO and change your own logic and your strategy. Then you will receive steadily, systematically, and your capital will grow and double in the former market. Thank you all so much for your attention, and good luck.